Great. Okay. Hello, everybody. Hope we're well and have an enjoyable afternoon and you've enjoyed the festival so far. My name is Gori Yahaya, so I'm the founder CEO of Upskill Digital, and I'm really excited to bring you today an amazing panel on the topic of future of work and skills in the COVID era, hopefully the post-COVID era. I'm super excited to be here and I'm very fortunate to be here with a great lineup of individuals who are really in the thick of it, shaping that future of work, and also entrepreneurialism as well. And with us today, we have Ewan Blair from White Hat, we have Gabby Hersham from Huckletree, and Julian Hall, CEO of Ultra Education. So very excited to have you all here today. Now, I wanted to kick this off by giving you all the platform to introduce yourselves, obviously, and at the same time, I'd love to pose a question to you as well. So firstly, the question that I have for you is, what do you think the lasting impact will be from the pandemic and what that will have on the future of work? And just, I guess, to be polite, can I kick off with Gabby, if you wouldn't mind starting us off, and then move on to Julian and then Ewan.
Cool, thanks so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Gabby Hersham. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Huckletree. We are a workspace accelerator company for the innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystem with hubs across London, Manchester, and Dublin. And to answer the question, which I think is great, and hopefully we'll all give our kind of, specifically focused insights. Mine obviously relates to workspace and what the future of workspace looks like. And I think it's obvious to us right now, but something that we couldn't have predicted 12 months ago is that I really feel that we are all going to have much more flexibility in where we choose to work from, which I think is great, especially for us parents who need that time at home, who are missing out on precious time, and for so many other people, this flexibility brings such a greater work-life balance. So I really see people choosing to spend more time working from home and working from the workspace, and for that not to be seen as a negative anymore. I also see enterprise and big corporates moving into more flexible workspace offerings, which is great for my industry, and really buying into the added value that workspace operators can bring them with their kind of innovation endeavors.
Interesting approach. I think there's definitely going to be a bit of a shift in the way we work. We've all seen it with remote working. Julian, perhaps you'd like to give us a bit of an insight into what you think the pandemic will have in terms of a lasting effect on the future of work.
Sure, Gori. So just as a reminder to everyone, I run an organization, as Gori mentioned, called Ultra Education, and we seek to use entrepreneurship as a way to transform the lives of children as young as 7 years old. And I've also just recently, in the last 6 months, in order to scale the availability of our entrepreneurial curriculum, developed an AI-powered chatbot that can do the same. It's available in 146 countries at the moment, and the social enterprise delivers across the UK. And when we are kind of talking to kids about entrepreneurship, really we kind of unpack the term and introduce them to some of the nuggets and the cornerstones of entrepreneurship. And in this regard, we know that disruption provides opportunity, and that there's always a learning. There's always a way in which they present the ability to perhaps do things better. So we're in a very different space as currently, and that will only project itself into the future. And we're all gazing into our own individual crystal balls to work out what that could be. But I think for us, it's about what trends do we see, and some of them have been ongoing and are pointing towards the future of work through the World Economic Forum Future of Jobs report. So we do understand some of the skill sets that were touted, whether it's critical thinking, teamwork skills, stuff around data, being a digital professional. The COVID has accelerated those. So where the World Economic Forum may have said, well, actually, that's coming in 2030. It's probably come this year. So for us, it's just about the acceleration of what has already been researched and tying those in with entrepreneurship, in the fact that it presents an opportunity, because we all know that in the previous recession or downturn, there were lots of tech companies who saw an opportunity to improve the way that we communicate, whether it was companies like Slack or Zoom, to improve the way that we move around, companies like Uber. And I think that now particularly the message that we're giving to young entrepreneurs is, as tough as this might be, see this as an opportunity to solve a problem. So whether it's a problem that you have personally, if it's a problem that may exist in your family, in your local communities, and take this opportunity, because for me, what happens in the next 10 or 20 years is going to be owned by kids who are in sixth form or in university now, right? So I kind of see a responsibility to empower them with that way of thinking, so that they can have the best shot at reframing what life looks like and what the future of work looks like. And in a nutshell, I would like to see it being more adaptable and more entrepreneurial.
Absolutely. I think we're trying to build this generation of problem solvers with more problems that are popping up. Ewan, love to hear from you.
Yeah, and love what Julian said there. Heartily agree with that. So I'm Ewan, founder and CEO of White Hat. For those of you who don't know us, we're on a mission to create a diverse group of future leaders by building an outstanding alternative to university through apprenticeships. And White Hat really exists because we feel university's broken as a one-size-fits-all model. They're still teaching people the way they were decades ago, despite all the changes we're seeing in the labor market. And actually, they're failing to meet the challenge on improving social mobility. We have apprentices at some of the world's top companies, Google, Facebook, Sky, Bloomberg, Omnicom, Visa, all there without university degrees. And then we're increasingly reskilling people who are looking to change careers. And I think probably the biggest impact this is having for us is really on priorities for business. So diversity and access to opportunity are firmly at the top of the agenda for every CEO, every board of every major organization. And they're going to have to take these issues seriously and demonstrate the steps they're taking in this area. And the other thing we've witnessed is this, as Julian said, this rapid acceleration of the need for digital skills. Every major global company is in some stage of undergoing the transformation they'll need to be successful over the next decade. Digital skills will be at the heart of that. So I think we're seeing much more prominent now diversity and access to opportunity and the need for digital skills.
Really interesting. I think yourself and Julian both mentioned that acceleration of transformation and the need for skills. And this entire session is about the future of work, the future of skills. And we know, and I'm sure at the start of the year we were banning about this figure around sort of 90% of jobs for the future requiring some form of digital skills, right? And we know the pandemic has definitely accelerated that and increased that number. And actually, I'll kind of keep back on yourself, Ewan, as we're talking about apprenticeships, and you've been building some really exciting apprenticeship programs for, like you mentioned, some of the larger organizations of White Hat. And with these programs, I'm sure you're getting a good understanding of the kind of skills that employees are looking for. So when you're considering how that perhaps has even changed from the pandemic, or what is more in demand, I'd love to know, what do you feel are the most in demand technical or softer transferable skills that employees are actually looking for? And how can people think about perhaps even future-proofing their career? What skills should they be looking at, especially when there are a lot of job seekers out there and the climate is truly in flux?
So, I mean, look, on future-proofing their career, clearly a lot of people are looking at this. It's something where apprenticeships can be a great way of doing this. We're actually spending a lot of time reskilling people who are transitioning into more data-focused roles, more technical roles, or moving into leadership and management positions. And I think everyone's going to have to get comfortable with the fact that we'll have multiple careers, often spanning different disciplines. We'll need to be constantly retraining and learning in order to take advantage of the opportunities that are going to come our way. I think if you were classifying skills in broad sets, on the technical skills front, data analytics is the one I'd hone in on. It's in huge demand. And look, clearly software engineering is an important growing area too, but in terms of core need across the workforce, organizations will need more people who are confident and conversant with data than they are with actually coding. So I think from a technical skills perspective, that's probably the most critical. And then on the business skills front, prioritization, massively important. The ability to triage often quite complex problems rapidly and focus your efforts in the right areas. And then things like leadership and management. You've got to take people with you. You've got to coach and develop them. Those skills will remain in huge demand. And we're spending a lot of time focusing on those currently. You touched then on the kind of softer skills. I prefer to think of them as human skills that will be essential. And they can't easily be automated. empathy is definitely one of the most important. If you can't empathize with co-workers, customers, suppliers, you'll come unstuck quite quickly, especially at the moment we're living through right now. And then that ability to build relationships, either remotely or in person, is still something everyone's going to have to work at. And I think a lot of people express frustrations at the remote nature of communication at the moment, and it's not as easy to go and meet people. We're all going to have to turn remote communication into a bit of a superpower, because that is the way many, many things in both the business world and actually even in our personal lives are going to happen over the next few months, regardless of when we have a vaccine or when the world starts to recover from the pandemic.
Yeah, I can agree with you more. I think, the whole idea of the human skills being essential, right? And people treating them as such, we've all been on probably a bit of a roller coaster of emotions through lockdown and the pandemic, and, just really sort of leveraging those human skills is going to be key if we're trying to future-proof our careers. And employees are definitely looking for people with those skills currently, in the workplace. Now, with the disruption that we've just talked about, and employees really having the goalposts of skills shifted across and them reprioritizing. You had mentioned earlier about diversity being very high on their list, top of the list at the moment. Gabby, I'd love to move on to you, because I believe businesses are trying to think about how they invest in a diverse workforce, right? And I know Huckletree have been running some accelerator programs for diverse founders, for example. How do you feel businesses can work harder to build a diverse talent pipeline that essentially reflects the society they're trying to serve, right? A lot of companies are really having more consideration for that. And I would love to know from your experience, especially if it's in the tech sector, for example, how organizations can try to build that diverse talent pipeline.
Definitely. And I think that, you made a really good point. You said, how can they work harder? I think that there are, a lot of companies that are genuinely trying, but there are also a lot of companies who, did what they needed to do when, with the George Floyd killing and when the Black Lives Matter movement resurfaced, but kind of touched on it very loosely and didn't really follow it through. And I think that they've fallen away from it, and we need to help companies and know what to do and get back to it. I think that there are some basics that we all should know by now that are the best ways to attract diverse talent. So you want to make sure that your job descriptions don't have any problematic language. You want to make sure that your website shows a really diverse workforce and is a place where people can see themselves represented and where they can see themselves working at. You want to make sure that you are speaking to recruiters who focus on attracting diverse talent, that you're really showing up in the right places where people of color and other diverse talent will be, and that you're investing time in finding them. I actually was on a roundtable discussion last night where a friend of mine said, hard to find. This concept that diverse talent is hard to find is not true. Let's flip that on its head. It's not the talent that's hard to find, it's the company that's hard to find. What if you're not finding the talent because you're only showing up in a few places where they aren't? And that really resonated with me. I think that to look at it more holistically, I think that diverse talent can afford to be selective about the businesses that they go to. It's not just about going to, the startup finding them. It's about them wanting to work for startups that genuinely show that they are committed to creating a fully inclusive community. And I think that that is really the benchmark for all of us, is we can undertake all of these mechanisms and we can go out there, but if we're not genuinely showing that commitment internally, I think it's going to be very hard to attract diverse talent.
Yeah, I think I can agree more. The idea of working harder to be able to find that talent is so key, right? So they've got to be thinking, where am I putting out my job adverts? Which platforms am I leveraging? Which partners am I working with to make sure that I'm finding this? It's really, really well put. But then there is a second issue. So they have hired diverse talent, and the talent land in their organization, but perhaps don't feel they're in an environment that really feels like it's an inclusive workspace. So I'd love to, again, continue with you to ask you, how can organizations really foster more inclusive workspaces? Because we often talk about equity and the need for people to be able to flourish regardless of their identity or their ability. How can organizations really focus on building that environment?
Super important. And I think, you've hit the nail on the head when you say that, it's great if we're trying to attract the diverse talent, but if they're not staying with us, then we're still doing something wrong. For me, you know, there are a couple of key areas to focus on in this regard. The first one is quite obvious, but it is something that a lot of businesses aren't tackling yet. It's make sure that your workspace is a safe space for all employees to become activists, to call out problematic behavior and problematic language, to address any bias. And that is something that, you know, we need to be us as the leaders need to be making sure that these conversations are being had continuously. I think in terms of kind of specific mechanisms, mentoring and sponsorship, another topic that came up and featured heavily on our roundtable last night, sponsorship. You know, make sure that your employees that are coming in and joining the organization have somebody who will promote them behind closed doors, will invite them into closed rooms, will speak their name when they're not around, will give them opportunities that they might not have had access to. Promotion and development is another one. Make sure that, you know, you have transparency in those processes, that you have diverse decision-making panels, that everybody can see the processes for promotion and for development, and everybody can have access to them, and that everybody knows that they have access to the same opportunity and the same process. And the last thing that I was going to say on that is that, you know, leadership, and this really resonated with me after my discussion with my friends last night, is the leadership behind any business needs to be participating in these conversations outside of their business with their peers as often as possible. So I left the roundtable last night, as you can hear, brimming with new understanding, brimming with new ideas. And I think it's important for all leaders to be having these conversations with their peers on an ongoing basis.
Absolutely. I think something that you were sort of alluding to is the importance of transparency. So if people are thinking, how do I progress through this organization, keeping them transparent about who they can connect with and what the opportunities are there. So I think that's a really, really good point. And just to remind you all, we only have a few minutes left. If you do have any questions, please, by all means, add them into the chat, and hopefully we'll have a minute or so to cover them towards the end. I wanted to move on to yourself, Julian. You're an advocate for entrepreneurship. So you mentioned before you're building a phenomenal app that's helping young entrepreneurs really foster the skills that they need within entrepreneurship. And as we can all imagine, the job climate is in a state of flux. You know, what I'm keen to know from yourself, Julian, is why do you feel, why should people consider entrepreneurship as an attractive path? For example, if you're not, if you're struggling as a job seeker, you know, to find out what skills you need or how you can get the job that you want, why might entrepreneurship be a different approach and perhaps even a viable one for you?
Yeah, so I think, you know, taking it down from a really kind of high level philosophical as to why entrepreneurship, there's very practical reasons. I know young people who have applied for literally 100 jobs and can't find any. So for me, I've always said, if you can't find the job of your dreams, you should be able to create the job of your dreams. It's not that I want to, you know, I want everyone to be an entrepreneur, but I do want everyone to be happy in employment. You know, we're far too comfortable with hating Monday mornings and loving Friday evenings. For me, that isn't the ambition of the next generation, right? And in working with communities who don't often have access to a brilliant work pipeline, their skills are often better pivoted towards creating their own employment and creating their own dream job, because many of them just simply don't have the networks to get them into the types of work that they would love. And often when they do, I'm referencing an article on the BBC website this week, you have, you know, Black, Asian and minority ethnic groups in this country who are having to change their identity when they go into the corporate workplace, right? So all of these kind of subtle nuances, which for me become struck through when you are an entrepreneur and you're kind of doing your own thing, because, you know, to do that successfully, it actually reinforces who you are. You have to dial up your own identity in order to become, you know, to dial up your communication, because you've got to be authentic. And so there are lots of things that entrepreneurship solves in regards to, you know, an employment pathway. The other thing, though, when we talk about how corporates engage in a diverse talent pipeline, there's also this supply chain, because I think that, you know, I'll give you an example. In the borough that I live, they literally spend £1 billion a year. That's what goes out the door. And, you know, the question then becomes, well, you know, what does that look like in terms of diversity of, you know, outsourced companies and suppliers, and is it even local, right? And all of this sets an ambition for young people who will think, well, you know, if I can't see myself at board level, if I can't see myself in the supply chain, if I can't see myself in corporate, then I might as well go off and do my own thing, the challenge then lies in the fact that they don't necessarily have all the support to be able to do their own thing, whether it's through apprenticeships, whether it's access to amazing workspaces, or if it's education. So for me, it solves a number of problems.
Gosh, you really appreciate that. I think there is a lot of opportunities there for people to think differently about the job space, right? And think differently about their skills being leveraged in an entrepreneurial sense. It looks like we're almost running out of time. So I want to jump straight in with final thoughts. It's been a fantastic session learning from all of you about how we can shape the future of work. But I'd love you for all probably maybe 10 seconds or so, give me your thoughts on how we can shape the future of work and perhaps even access to skills to ensure they're more inclusive to drive better opportunities for all. So I'll start with you again, Gabby, just 10 seconds. What are your final thoughts on that?
I think very obvious one, but I think continuing to ensure that we're having, that we are recruiting as diverse a group as possible and retaining them, I think will just ensure that we are progressing in the right direction and skilling everybody in, equally. You put me on the spot there. That was a bit of a muffled answer, but that's kind of what I think.
No, it makes sense. Making it equal and thinking about the equity side of it too. Ewan, what are your thoughts?
I, by the way, fully agree with what Gabby said. And let's turn the talk into action, right? Companies actually have the power to change who gets access to opportunities. It's one of the reasons we're such an advocate for apprenticeships. Don't rely on existing mechanisms or systems to actually find you diverse talent or somehow hope they're going to make their way through what is an archaic and outdated process. Be incredibly open, reach communities at source, and use things like apprenticeships, both to attract really diverse talent from a variety of backgrounds, but also to go and reskill people and make sure you're distributing those opportunities much more evenly than they are currently.
Absolutely. And Julian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would just like to echo what both Ewan and Gabby were saying. Action should follow empathy. Lots of these forums create an empathy to the challenges, but not necessarily the action. But also, I think that action comes from board level because, you can have a great, D&I lead, but I've spoken to many of them who don't feel empowered to be able to move the needle on some of the issues that they face because it comes ultimately with the need for resource, and that resource is often signed off at board level. So if we create more diverse boards or boards who are constantly educated, not just through a month, not just because there's been a massive issue in BLM, but is part of the fabric of organizations to have these discussions and take a long-term approach to the strategy.
Absolutely, couldn't agree. I agree wholeheartedly with all of that. And as you're saying, even our Upskill Digital, we're doing a lot of sessions around career progression and actually educating the leadership around these challenges that we're facing. For all of you, firstly, thank you so much. So insightful, amazing insights that we got from, Gabrielle talking about inclusive workspaces, Ewan talking about that human touch, thinking about great technical skills such as data analysis and things that are useful in this current time, and Julian getting us to think differently about entrepreneurship, right? Make sure we leverage our skills there. Again, I want to say thank you. Apologies we weren't able to get to the questions that were put out there. Again, it was a short session, but really appreciate your time, and hopefully you get to enjoy some of the other sessions in Black Tech Fest.